The views and opinions expressed by the guest author or speaker during this live session are their own and do not necessarily reflect the views of Reader's Magnet. The content shared is for informational purposes only and does not constitute endorsement or promotion of any particular belief, ideology, or product.
Hello, authors, book lovers, and storytellers. Welcome to the RM Hive. You're tuning into Reader's Magnet's featured author interview. I'm Brittany, and today I have the pleasure of speaking with Theodore Shorter, author of the compelling book Lovingly and Orderly: A Son's Lament. Theodore, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
All right, so let's begin, shall we?
Yes.
So, Ted, let's start with the heart of your work. Can you summarize the plot or primary idea of Lovingly and Orderly: A Son's Lament in a few sentences?
Well, I like to say, and I'd like to pass along an appreciation for the opportunity to tell you about my book. But the I would say the book is about the death of a mother who is devoted to the worship and acknowledgement of the Lord God and the rearing of her children. When she's the only parent left, is an enduring and heartfelt time that will expose vulnerabilities to the moral foundation and essence of the family. One son, confronted with one obstacle after another by the wicked conduct through betrayal, never wavered in his love, commitment, and devotion to his mother and God. Despite the insidious evil and turbulent obstacles in our society to stop him, and Lovingly and Orderly: A Son's Lament, the reader goes through the dark, vague, forsaken realm of the Circuit Court of Cook County, probate division, where the adherence to law and procedure is a blind myth for those seeking justice on behalf of the dearly departed who no longer feel the acute pain of injustice in the United States of America.
So, Ted, I heard the word justice and the dearly departed. Well, am
Yes,
I right?
yes.
So, I want to ask you what inspired you to write this particular book? I believe those two words are very important in this one. It,
Well, what
is it
inspired me to
something
write the
deeply
book
personal?
was, I would say, the first thing was God.
All right.
I was raised in a household, where I was introduced to God and through Jesus Christ, and that was my inspiration. Among other things, I would have to say that I'm following in the vein of so many other authors from my racial background who has
Mhm.
experienced racism and
Yes.
segregation and discrimination, and I wanted to I guess, convey the humanistic value of what we go through in
Yes.
terms of our inhabitants in the United States of America. And a lot of people, the pain, and I call it the Black fatigue,
The
where you
black
you just get
fatigue.
beat down and you want to express your opinion, express what you've been through.
Yes. Oh dear. So you've touched on some powerful themes, Ted. Were there any real life events or experiences that influenced you in writing this book?
I would say, as far as life experiences, I would say, just my upbringing, being born and raised in Chicago,
Chicago.
in a segregated environment where, places where I wasn't allowed to go. And one of those places I found out as I gotten older and was able to experience was the justice system. For decades, for centuries, we've been given the short end of the stick, if I might call it that, in terms of justice. And injustice everywhere is a threat to justice everywhere.
Mhm.
So that that's where those experiences, and and not to mention the fact that it was committed by my own siblings in a way that I would have never believed.
Wow. Um, let's talk about your craft, Ted. So, what was your writing process like for your book? Did you use an outline, or did the story just evolve organically as you wrote
I
it?
would say it evolved organically. I didn't have an idea
Mhm.
initially when I started writing. I got involved with the process of writing uh, through another publisher, and I was exchanging
Mhm.
proofs and writing the book. And I met a woman that helped me, and she brought out this. This kind of, I would say, an internal force inside of me. I used to read a lot of books coming from different authors, as far as like James Baldwin, Richard Wright, Ralph Ellison, to name a few, and
Mhm.
I could relate to the experiences of those authors, and that was the process that I thought about when I was writing the book, and listening to different songs and music and things that related to my background also helped me to be able to put the book together.
I actually love hearing about that. The fact that well, your writing process involved getting to know yourself better, right?
Right, exactly.
Yeah. So,
I mean, I'm
speaking of,
surprised myself a lot of times when I read the book, and I'm like, did I
yeah,
think of that?
yeah,
It was something that was just internal that brought about this metamorphosis in me to make me come, to be able to think of connections and keep a story flow. And one of the things I have to say is, it seemed like it was meant to be.
hmm,
Because I tell you in the first part of the book, about my mother's entry into the world and the brutality that she
yes,
faced. I mean, coming out of the womb, as far as like the violence that she
hmm,
was subjected to. And that's the chapter number 1, called Trauma. And I
yeah,
talk about how my great grandfather beat my grandmother because the when he discovered that my grandmother was pregnant, and this was
oh,
back during the Great Depression in 1931, whereas it was taboo for a woman to get pregnant, and they
oh,
should have been married. And I mean, he beat my grandmother senselessly. And my
mm,
mother was just born. Could you imagine coming into the world and having to deal with that kind of experience?
yeah,
Not being nurtured, and it had an impact on her for her entire life.
yes. Wow, that's rather heavy.
That's why I say it was a story that was
Yeah,
meant to be told. You know,
yes,
it,
it
it
is definitely.
yeah, because I mean, she didn't have the support mechanisms coming into the world, but
Hmm.
through me, I believe I was the sole support for her in terms of standing firm in my position into defending her honor.
Yes, yes, I agree with that. Speaking of defending your mother's honor, Ted, what themes or messages do you hope to convey in this book? What do you hope readers will take away when they read your story?
Well, I hope they're able to take away from the first sentence in my
Mhm.
mother's impulsively prepared handwritten memorandum, which is in chapter 4, titled Pious Departure. And she wrote a letter to her 5 children, and she said, at my death, I would like things carried lovingly and orderly. I
Yeah,
mean,
something weird.
as I think about that, I kind of, I feel goosebumps. It's like,
Yeah,
okay, that was a profound message. And the book, I mean, the document was withheld from me for up until I found out about what my siblings did. And they turned around and did some other criminal, illegal things with that document, which I kind of gave you background in the book.
All right. Now, my next question, Ted, is I know you put your whole heart into this book. So, as the creator of this work, what is your favorite scene or passage in the book?
Well, I think the favorite scene in the passage in my book is when I began my investigation. Um, uh, it was in the old Colony building. It'll be right down the
Mhm.
street from the Printers Row Lit Fest. In fact,
Oh, yeah.
yes. And we were deposing my older sister, Pamela Manning,
Hmm.
and the attorney asked her, is she familiar with my mother's signature? And she said, I am. And then he said, is that your mother's signature? And she said, I can't say, I don't know. And then he said, are you familiar with your mother's signature? And she said, yes, I am. And then he said, is that your mother's signature? And she said, I don't know. I wasn't there. I can't say. Did you sign it? And there were a
She
battery of
did.
questions that came out as a result of her deposition in
Hmm.
that chapter called Cowardly Sister, where she
Yeah.
didn't have the nerve to be able, or the nerve or the courage to stand and response and honor our mother
Yeah.
by saying that that wasn't her signature that was on that forged document.
Yeah. So your sister forged the document.
That's my sister Rosman. Rosman forged my mother's signature on the document and recorded the document 8 days after my mother's death.
Oh my. Now I'm personally curious about this book now. I definitely want to read it. Wow. um back to back to the uh, main topic. Ted, how has your writing evolved over time, and do you have any advice you could give to aspiring authors who might be
Oh,
dealing with similar emotional or personal subject matters in their own work like you?
what advice would I give to them?
Yeah.
I would give advice to them to always remain steadfast in their beliefs that
Mhm.
that they can be able to stand up against injustice if they so happen to confront that. And and the African American community in particular, right now, what's going on in the press, you hear about the National Guard being activated. And one of the things that comes to my mind is, well, if you just heed to the directives of my mother's handwritten memorandum and do things with love and order, you know,
Mhm.
you, you won't have to worry. You won't have to. You can always speak with truth.
Yeah.
So that's what I think. As far as like if you so happen to want to be able to tell your experience, because a lot of people go through life and then they internalize some of the experiences that they have. They don't want to really talk about the
Yeah.
historical impact of some of the things they've been through. But I think it's cathartic for you to be able to express yourself and get it off your chest more or less and not internalize it, because no one learns, no one gets anything. It's just like if you see a dog down the street and he so happens to have attacked you, you have a responsibility, in my opinion, to tell others about what you've experienced so they don't have to go through the same thing.
That's true. I agree with that. It's important to share your experiences, your knowledge, and of course, those three words made an impact on me listening to you right now, Ted. Love, order, and the truth. Those things are very important in life.
Yes, most definitely.
Yeah. So before we wrap up, Ted, we want to know, especially the viewers right now, what's next for you? Do you have any projects you're working on that you want to share right now?
Well, I've been told a lot of times
Mm-hmm.
about the fact that my book should be created or made into a cinematic adaptation or play. And I kind of agree with that for those people who might be challenged in terms of being able to read. I find that out,
Yeah.
when people buy my book, they say, well, this is a lot. I can't read it. And I would think that, I think of this movie, one film, and I don't know if you're familiar with it, or maybe people in the audience will be. It's
What is it?
Raising in the Sun.
I
But
haven't watched that yet.
yeah,
Sorry.
it's a movie that Sidney Poitier and Ruby Dee so happened to be in a family where they had a death. Sidney Poitier's father died, or they called him Walter Younger.
Walter Young.
His dad died, and they were supposed to receive a $10,000 insurance policy, and everybody wanted a piece of that money. And
Mhm.
um, Sidney Poitier wanted to use the money to buy a liquor store. He wanted to sell liquor, and he ended up losing the money. But the
Oh,
family stayed together in spite of the loss of that money. There was a contentious environment, but I mean, the I guess the rainbow in the story was what the family stuck together. And I believe in my heart of hearts
mhm.
that at some point, right now my siblings and I are estranged from each other,
Yes.
but I believe at some point they will understand and recognize what our mother's true intent of that
Yeah.
document that she prepared.
Yes, that's true. Wow. Actually, the whole interview, I agree with the people who told you that this should become a film. I actually agree that that's what I've been thinking the whole time I was listening to you talk about your story, Ted.
Right. I mean, you hear so much of it,
Yeah.
in television where they have, somebody has a reading of the will, but it's
Hmm.
not like that in reality. I've just seen just the other day a family disputing amongst themselves after the death of a loved one and who was going to get what. So we're so materialistic in this world,
Yeah,
that we lose sight of the love and respect for one another.
that's true. It's I've seen it too. I've seen it a few times before, families getting into conflicts, not talking to each other anymore. Yeah.
Right. I mean, and that's what I hope to be able to convey through the writing of my book.
Yeah.
I couldn't remain silent.
Hmm.
I mean, and this has been a long time, because my mother died in 2000,
So
and it was something that gradually developed, and I didn't really know what was going on because I was so overwhelmed by the
mhm,
departure of my mother, but spiritually, she never left me.
yeah, that's the power of a mother's love.
Yes.
So um yeah, Ted, do you want to tell the viewers right now where they can get your book?
Oh, they can get my book on Amazon and Barnes and Noble. Those are the two platforms, and Ingram Spark. Those are the platforms that my book is available.
And also, Theodore also has a website. So for the viewers out there who want to get to know more about Ted, there is a website, www.authortheodoreshorter.com. So Theodore, thank you so much for sharing your story and insights with us today.
Thank
Lovingly
you.
and orderly, a son's lament is a powerful and moving read. So definitely order a copy on Amazon and Barnes and Noble, as Ted mentioned, and be sure to visit Theater's website. This has been Brittany, and as we say here in Reader's Magnet, we share your story with the world. Happy reading, everybody!